Good evening and welcome to the season 12 premiere of Mystery Unsolved. I'm of course your host. You know my name, you know what this game is. Can you believe it? It's been 12 seasons worth of Mystery Unsolved. And I just found out a couple hours ago that the last episode of season 11 was in fact the 100th episode of the series, which is crazy to me. We're in like sitcom territory right now. 100 episodes. You wouldn't know it. You really wouldn't. But here we are for the season 12 premiere of Mystery Unsolved. What is the case on? Something I've never heard of. So we're about to go in this together with fresh ears, set of eyes, and curious minds. Without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, the Yuba County 5. The Yuba County Five were a group of young men from Yuba County, California, each with mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions, who were reported missing after attending a college basketball game at California State University Chico, also known as Chico State, on the night of February 24th, 1978. Four of them, Bill Sterling, 29, Jack Hewitt, 24, Ted Weyer, 32, and Jack Madruga, 30, were later found dead. The fifth, Gary Mathias, 25, has never been found. So their ages are all over the place. Four of them were found dead, and the fifth one is missing. So right away, WTF, right? What's going on? Several days after their disappearance, Madruga's car, a 1969 Mercury Montego, in which the group had driven to Chico, was found abandoned in a remote area of Plumas National Forest, on a high mountain dirt road which was far out of their way back to Yuba County. Investigators could not determine why the car was abandoned, as it was in good working order and could easily have the snowpack it was in. At that time, no trace of the men was found. In June of 1978, four of the men's bodies were discovered after the snow had melted. Ted Weyer was found inside a United States Forest Service trail some 20 miles north of the abandoned car. Only bones were left of Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, and Jackie Hewitt as a result of scavenging animals. Weyer had apparently lived for as long as 3 months the men were last seen, starving to death despite an ample supply of food and heating materials in the nearby trailer. Weyer was missing his shoes. Investigators found Mathias' own shoes in the USFS trailer, suggesting Mathias also survived for some time beyond the group's last sighting. So right away, I have several questions. Like, how did they end up 20 miles from the car? Also, what are the conditions of their mental states, I guess? Let's go to the beginning here, because it does say mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions. Like, what is this like exactly? A learning disability or formerly mental retardation. Okay, that's that. What are psychiatric conditions? Mental health condition, psychiatric disability. Okay, so they were kind of like mentally disturbed, I guess. But like how mentally disturbed, incompetent, and how much of retardation did they have? It said mild. So how mild are we talking here? Obviously mild enough to that they can still operate a vehicle, they can still function in society and talk and hold conversations, attend events, and all be friends together. So yeah, like I just wanted to know because this might be a reason of their death. This might be a determination in factor. Determining factor. Wow, here we go. A local man came forward claiming that he had spent the same night in his own car a short distance away from where the mercury was found. The witness told police that he had seen and heard people around his car that night, and twice called for help, only for them to go silent and turn off their flashlights. This and the considerable distance from the car to where the bodies were found has led to suspicions of foul play. Okay, so a random guy is like, hey, I was actually camped out in my car near that car. I heard voices, I saw flashlights, but then it got quiet. That's kind of suspicious. Probably shouldn't have come forward. Okay, I'm going to give background on some of the men just so that we are aware of the mild mental conditions and psychiatric disabilities that they have. We kind of need to know this because it will help in better understanding what could have happened, if this could have been a factor, right? While he was stationed in West Germany as part of his United States Army service in the early 1970s, Gary Mathias, a resident of Marysville, California, developed substance issues. Okay, Gary Mathias is the only one that just disappeared and they never found his body. So he has substance issues, sorry. This eventually led to him being diagnosed with schizophrenia and being given a psychiatric discharge. Oh, okay. So this guy had some serious drug issues that led to him becoming schizophrenic. Matthias returned to his parents' home in Marysville and began treatment at a local mental hospital. While it had been difficult at first, he was nearly arrested for assault twice and often experienced psychotic episodes that landed him in a local Veterans Administration hospital. By 1978, he was being treated on an outpatient basis with trifluoropazine and benzentropine and was considered by his physicians to be one of our sterling success cases. So, if you give, okay, here's my issue. Red flag. Let's see if you caught it too. You know what bothers me about this? You know what bothers me? He's in there for drug issues. So what do they do to diagnose it? They give him more drugs. And then they have the audacity to go on and say, he was one of our biggest success cases. Was he though? Or was he just bullshitting you because he found ways to do it? I don't know. It seems kind of weird to me. It's driving me nuts. I could see it in the back of my corner of my eye. Okay. Matthias supplemented his army disability pay by working in his stepfather's gardening business. Off the job, outside of his family, he was close friends I don't know why I'm doing that. Off the job, outside his family, he was close friends with four men who either had intellectual disabilities, Weyer and Hewitt, or informally considered slow learners, Sterling and Madruga. The latter also the Army veteran. Oh, okay, okay. So he met them perhaps at the facility, other places. Okay, this is interesting. The men lived in Yuba County and nearby Marysville. Like Matthias, each man lived with his parents, all of whom referred to them collectively as the boys. The men's favorite leisure activity was sports. Their families said that when the five of them got together, it was usually to play a game or to watch one. They played basketball together on a team called the Gateway Gators, a team supported by a local program for people with disabilities. Okay, so that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. So Matthias probably met them either at the mental hospital or throughout the community. So that's reasonable, right? Okay. And I would say mild disabilities and mental conditions. So We have that established. Now the disappearance. On February 25th, the Gators were due to play their first game in a week-long tournament sponsored by the Special Olympics, for which the winners would get a free week in Los Angeles. It was a sweet deal. The five men had prepared the night before, some even laying out their uniforms and asking their parents to wake them up on time. Okay, I understand they have like mental disabilities, but the fact that they all live with their parents and they're like over 25 or over 30 is like a little weird, but I get it. I'm totally not making fun. It's just weird to read that. They decided to drive to Chico the same night to cheer up the UC Davis basketball team in a away game against Chico State. Madruga, the only member of the group besides Matthias who had a driver's license, I kind of wondered that too, drove the group 50 miles north to Chico State campus, in his turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego coupe. Ah, it was his car. The men only wore light coats against the cool temperatures in the upper Sacramento Valley at the time of the year. After the Davis team won the game, the group returned to Madruga's car and drove a short distance from Chico State to Bayer's Market in downtown Chico, where they bought snacks, sodas, and cartons of milk. Cartons of milk to go with their snacks and their soda. I mean, all right, okay. It was shortly before the store's 10 p.m. closing time. The clerk later remembered the men because she was annoyed that such a large group had come in and delayed her from beginning the process of closing the store for the night. Oh. When morning came, the men had not returned. The police were notified by the men's families. Okay, okay. Investigation. Police in Butt and Yuba counties began searching along the route the men took to Chico. They found no sign of them, but a few days later, a Plumas National Forest ranger told investigators he had seen the Mercury parked in the forest along Oroville Quincy Road on February 25th. At the time, he had not considered it significant, since many residents often drove up that road in the Sierra Nevada mountain range on winter weekends to go cross country skiing on the extensive trail system. But after reading the missing persons bulletin, he recognized the car and led deputies to it on February 28th. So, police officer drives past the car. Doesn't think anything of it, right? But then he sees the missing persons bulletin and he's like, wait a minute. They were last seen in this type of car. I literally just saw that car a few days ago. Oh shit. Evidence found inside the car suggested the men had been. It keeps doing that. Evidence found inside the car suggested the men had been in between the time when they were last seen and when it was abandoned. Let me read that again. That totally threw me. Evidence found inside the car suggested the men had been in it between the time when they were last seen and when it was abandoned. Okay. I read that the first time and I was like, the empty wrappers and containers from the food and drinks they had purchased from the store in Chico were present, along with programs from the basketball game they had attended and a neatly folded map of California. The car's location, 70 miles from Chico, was far from any direct route to Yuba City or Marysville. None of the men's families could have speculated as to why they might have driven up a long and wind-drifted road on a winter night, deep in a high elevated remote forest without extra clothing. Madruga's parents said he did not like cold weather and had never been up in the mountains. Sterling's father had once taken his son to the area near where the car was found for a fishing weekend, but the younger man had not enjoyed it and remained at home when his father took regular trips there. Okay, so none of the men were like, according to the families, none of them were like appreciative of, forests, mountains. So the fact that the car was there doesn't really make sense to them. Police were puzzled by the car's abandonment. The road was at least 4,400 feet in elevation, about where the snow line was at the time of the year, a short distance from where the road was closed for the winter. The car had become stuck in snowdrifts, and there was evidence the men had tried to spin the wheels to get out of it. Police noted that the snow was not very deep, and that five healthy young men should have easily been able to push the car out. The car keys were not present, suggesting, at first, that the car had been abandoned because it might not have been operating properly. With the intention of returning later with help, when police hotwired the car, the engine started immediately, and the fuel gauge indicated that the tank was 1/4 full of gasoline. Okay, so that doesn't make sense. They still had a 1/4 full of gasoline. The tires were kind of stuck, but according to the police, they're like, well, they're four healthy men. They had plenty of gas. Yes, they got stuck, but if you put it all together, reasonably, they should have been able to get out. Again, I'm not leaning on this, but again, the whole disabilities thing, maybe the driver drifted, like he drove so far and he became lost and disoriented, and it disoriented and made the other ones upset, the rest of the men, and they were like, they just kind of stopped where they were. I'm already come up with a theory and I haven't finished reading. Okay. There's a lot left. I don't really know if I want to read all this. Holy shit. But we got to go through it. All right. Police drove the car back to the station for a more thorough examination. The Mercury's undercarriage had no dents, gouges, or even mud scrapes, not even on its low-hanging muffler, despite having been driven a long distance up a mountain road with many bumps, ruts, and potholes. Either the driver had been extremely careful, or it was someone familiar with the road, a familiarity Madruga was not known to have. His family said that Madruga would not have let someone else drive the car. The car was unlocked and had a window rolled down when it was found. Madruga's family indicated it was unlike him to leave the car so unsecured. Okay, just quickly, I'll have all my theories at the end, but like I just said, he wasn't familiar with the area. Literally before I read that, I had said maybe he kind of wandered into the territory, kind of looked around like, hey guys, I'm lost. And the rest of them are like, what do you mean we're lost? And then maybe, if not Madruga, then the other guy, which would be Gang Matthias, was like, you know what? Let me try to get us out of here. And Madruga and him had a little bit of an argument. I don't know. I'm speculating here. Efforts to search the vicinity were hampered by a severe snowstorm that day. 2 days later, after searchers and snowcats nearly became lost themselves, further search efforts were called off due to continuing bad weather. Other than the car, no trace of the men were found. So I'm thinking maybe they clearly thought they were stuck. That's what I think. In response to the local media coverage of the case, police received several reports of some or all of the men being sighted after they had left Chico, including some of the reports of them being seen elsewhere in California or the country. Most of the reports were easily dismissed, but two of the sightings stood out. Joseph Scons of Sacramento told police he inadvertently wound up spending the night on February 24th and 25th near where the Montego was found. He had driven up there, where he had a cabin, to check the snowpack in advance for a weekend ski trip with his family. At 5:30 p.m., about 150 feet up the road, Scones, too, had gotten stuck in the snow. In the process of trying to flee his car, he realized he was beginning to experience the early symptoms of a heart attack and went back and keeping the engine running to provide heat. That's wild. Like your car gets stuck and it's so cold out, you're just like 6 hours later, lying in the car and experiencing severe pain, Scon saw headlights coming up behind him. Looking out, he saw a car parked behind him, headlights on, with a group of people around it, one of whom seemed to him to be a woman holding a baby. He called to the party for help, but they stopped talking and switched their headlights off. Later, he saw more lights from behind him, this time flashlights, that also went out when he called out to them. Well, that couldn't have been them because they didn't have a woman and a baby. Unless it says later he saw more lights behind him. All I know is that if there's three different sets of people all trying to come up on this mountain, then clearly, and they're all getting stuck, that kind of tells you something. After that, Scone said at first he recalled a pickup truck about 20 feet behind him briefly, and then continuing on down the road. Later, he clarified to police that he could not be sure since at the time he was almost delirious from pain. Yeah, that'll do it. After Scone's car ran out of fuel in the early morning hours, his pain subsided enough for him to walk 8 miles down the road to a lodge where the man drove him home, passing an abandoned Montego at the place where he had recalled hearing the voices originate. Okay, can we stop for a second? After Scone's car ran out of fuel in the morning hours, his pain subsided enough for him to walk 8 miles? I wouldn't even walk 8 miles healthy. And this man subsides a heart attack in pain and walks 8 freaking miles into the next town? Okay. That's one brave soldier. My God. Doctors later confirmed that he had indeed experienced a mild heart attack. So he actually experienced a mild heart attack and still walked 8 freaking miles. Wow. Okay. Weir's mother said ignoring someone's pleas for help was not like her son, if indeed he had been present. She recalled how he and Sterling had helped someone they knew get to the hospital after overdosing on Valium. That's just randomly in there. Weir is one of the guys. The other notable report was from a woman who worked at the store in a small town of Brownsville, 30 miles from where the car had been abandoned. On March 3rd, the woman who saw the flyers that had been distributed with the men's pictures and information about the $1,215 reward the families had put up told the deputies that four of them had stopped at the store in a red pickup truck the day after the disappearance. Interesting. Only four of them, and in a pickup truck. Where's the fifth guy? The store owner corroborated her account. The woman said she immediately realized that the men were not from the area because of their big eyes and facial expressions. Two of the men, whom she identified as Hewitt and Sterling, were in a telephone booth outside the store, while the other two went inside. The police said she was a credible witness and they took her account seriously. All right, we got one more block here, and then we got the discovery of bodies, and then we got theories. So there's a lot to go on here. And they're actually giving me theories. Remember, the last few cases, I've had to come up with my own theories because they don't give me crap. But we got theories here. Additional details came from the store owner, who told investigators that the men whom he believed to be Weir and Hewitt came and bought burritos, chocolate milk, and soft drinks. Weir's brother told the Los Angeles Times that while driving to Brownsville in a different car, in apparent ignorance of the basketball game, seemed to be completely out of character for them. The owner's description of the two men's behavior seemed consistent with them, and Weyer would eat anything he could get his hands on, and was often accompanied by Hewitt more than any of the other four. Hewitt's brother said Jack hated using telephones, to the point that he would answer calls for Jack whenever he received any from the other men in the group. Okay, okay. God, are you kidding me? Uh, all right, this is a long one. This is the discovery of bodies. Holy crap! I talk so fast sometimes. With the evidence not pointing to any clear conclusion about what happened to the night the five men disappeared, police and the families were not ruling out the possibilities that they had met foul play. Justin, talk slow. The eventual discovery of the four of the five men's bodies seemed to suggest otherwise, but raised even more questions about what had happened that night, and whether at least one of them might have been rescued. On June 4th, with the most higher elevation snow melted, a group of motorcyclists went on a trailer maintained by the USFS at a campsite off the road about 20 miles from where the Mercury had been found. The front window of the trailer had been broken. When they opened the door, they were overcome by the stench of what turned out to be a decaying body inside. It was later identified as Ware's. Oh shit! Okay, so there was a trailer, and the minute they opened it, Ware. Searchers returned to Plumas, following the road between the trailer and where the Mercury was abandoned. The following day, remains that were later identified as those of Madruga and Sterling were discovered on opposite sides of the road from where the car had been, 11 miles from where the car had been. Madruga's body had been partially consumed by scavenging animals. Only bones remained of Sterling, scattered over a small area. Autopsies showed that they both died of hypothermia. The deputies think that one of them may have given in to the need to sleep that Deputies think that one of them may have given in to the need to sleep that comes with the last stages of hypothermia, while the other stayed by his side and died the same way. Wow. 2 days later, as part of one of the other search parties, Hewitt's father found his son's backbone under a manzanita bush, 2 miles northeast of the trailer. His shoes and jeans nearby helped identify the body. The next day, the deputy sheriff found a skull downhill from the bush, 300 miles away, confirmed by dental records later to have been Hewitt's. His death was also attributed to hypothermia. So they all froze to death, but like, why? How? Luckily, we have the theories because my head is just with questions. Around a quarter mile northeast of the trailer, searchers found 3 Forest Service blankets and a rusted flashlight next to the road. It could not be determined how long those items had been there. Since Matthias had presumably not taken his medication, his photograph was distributed to mental institutions all over California. However, no trace of him has ever been found. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I have a theory when I first read it that the one guy that whose body they didn't find, Gary Matthias, also didn't take his medication. And I thought this before I read that. I thought maybe he could have something to do with it. But then again, only 4 of them were found. Remember, only 4 of them were seen in the truck in the store? That's going to accomplish something. Wayer's body, wrapped in 8 sheets, including the head, was found on a bed inside the trailer. The autopsy showed that he had died of a combination of starvation and hypothermia. Okay, that theory button is getting juicier by the minute. Weyer had lost nearly half his 200 pounds. The growth of his beard suggested he had lived slightly more than 3 months from when he had last shaved. His feet were badly frostbitten, almost gangrenous. On a table next to the bed were some of Weyer's personal effects, including his wallet with cash, a nickel ring with Ted engraved on it, and a gold necklace he also wore. Also on the table was a gold watch, missing its crystal, which Weyer's family said was not his, and was a partially melted candle. He was wearing a velour shirt and light pants, but his shoes could not be found. Shit just keeps getting more bizarre by the minute. Alright, I'm just gonna solve this now. There we go. I'm just gonna shut it off. The light's driving me nuts. More puzzling to the investigators was how Weyer had come to his fate. The trailer's fireplace had not been used. Wait, the trailer has a fireplace? You know what? Never mind. I don't want to sound stupid, so let's keep reading. Despite an ample supply of matches and paperback novels to use as kindling, heavy forestry clothing which could have kept the men warm also remained where it had been stored. A dozen sea ration cans from a storage shed outside had been opened and their contents consumed, but a locker in the same shed that had an even greater assortment of dehydrated foods, enough to keep all 5 men fed for a year, if necessary, had not even been opened. You thinking what I'm thinking? I bet you are. If necessary, okay. Similarly, another shed nearby held a bitumen tank with a valve that, had it been opened, would have fed the trailer's heating system. Now, how do you suppose 4 men die from hypothermia, and one of them from hypothermia and starvation, despite the fact that there's a trailer that has enough heat in it to supply heat throughout, and enough rations to keep the 4 of them fed for an entire year? How do you suppose that happens? You thinking what I'm thinking? Weyer's family said that he lacked common sense as a result of his cognitive, cognitive, wow, cognitive disability. For example, he often asked why it was necessary to stop at a stop sign, and one night had to be dragged out of bed while the ceiling of his bedroom was burning in a house fire, because he was afraid he would miss his job if he didn't get some ample sleep. Okay, so one of the things I've kind of suspected was, again, from the very beginning when I read that they had disability issues and psychiatric conditions, I wanted to know the severity of it. This man, that kind of explains that to me. That kind of explains it. He doesn't know what, he lacks common sense. He doesn't know what certain things are. Maybe he doesn't know what rations are. Maybe he doesn't know that there's food in those cans. Maybe he doesn't know that the heating system is by like a butane tank. That one kind of just solved itself. It's kind of sad of how he died. I mean, if you really think about it, like all these things are around you, but because you lack common sense and you have a disability in a crisis, it kind of just all came together. That's what I think happened to him, sadly. It also appeared that Weyer had not been alone in the trailer, and that Matthias had also been there. Oh, the plot thickens. You thinking what I'm thinking? That's what I'm thinking. Gary Matthias, the one guy whose body was not found, nor was he ever found. Matthias's tennis sneakers were in the trailer, which is interesting considering Weyer's were not. And the sea rations had been opened with a P-38 can opener, with which only Matthias or Madruga would have been familiar from their military service. Matthias, his feet perhaps also swollen from frostbite, could have decided to put on Weyer's shoes, or instead, if he had ventured outside. The sheets covering Weyer's body also suggested that one of the others had been there with him, as his gangrenous feet would have caused too much pain for him to pull them over his body himself. Okay, the plot has just thickened. Okay. Theories. Let's see how long this is, because God help me. Okay, it's not that long. Okay. Theory. After it was determined that 4 of the 5 men had died in the Sierras, investigators still had no explanation as to why the men were there. Although they learned that Matthias had friends in the small town of Forbstown, and police believed it was possible that in an attempt to visit them on the way back home, the men may have taken a wrong turn near Oroville that put them on the mountain road. See what I thought that? Absolutely, I thought that. Thought that. Wow, Justin, talk slow. Because they weren't familiar with the area. So Matthias probably convinced the driver and the other ones, like, you know what, guys, I have friends over here. I don't know. We're not really familiar with this area. Oh, come on. It'll be worth it, I promise. Oh, all right. And they go up the mountain, they get stuck. For whatever reason, the men had left the Mercury instead of going back the way they came, where they had been past the lodge that Scones later returned to. They chose to continue along the road in the direction they were originally heading. The day before the men went missing, a USFS Snowcat had gone along the road in that direction to clear off snow off the trailer roof so that it would not collapse. It was possible, police believed, that the group had decided to follow the tracks and left. It left, though snowdrifts 4 to 6 feet high, to where they had led in the belief that the shelter was not too far away. Most likely, Madruga and Sterling died of hypothermia about halfway through the long walk to the trailer, and Hewitt soon after. Okay, that makes sense. We still don't know why they abandoned the car, though. The only thing I can think of is, again, they're not familiar with the area. Their disabilities and psychiatric conditions kind of played a factor in this whole, like, oh my God, we're lost. And they panicked. So their disability kind of, turned up a notch. And then 3, because they're in such a panic, they're like, oh no, I think the car won't start. And, no, it won't start. And only 2 of them know how to drive. So that makes sense to me. He convinces them they got to get out of the car, and they're walking. They decide to go back because they know enough, and they have enough common sense to be like, okay, well, let's go back the way we came, even though they didn't really have to because they didn't realize, yeah. That makes sense to me. It is assumed that once they found the trailer, the other 2 broke the window to enter. Since it was locked, they may have feared for arrest for burglary or theft if they used anything they found there. After Weyer died, or after Matthias thought he had died, he may have decided to try to get back to civilization by different ways, such as walking overland. And there you have it. Okay. So I think we figured out how Weyer died. While it does say like they didn't want to touch anything because they were afraid they were gonna, get arrested or whatever because they had broken in. Okay, that's also a factor, but I also think that because he lacked common sense and he had gangrene, you put it all together, it makes sense. Matthias, I'll save him for last. So the other ones had died along the way. So maybe the other 2, him and Weyer, had after the other ones had died, they decided to go up and they found the trailer. Now, the question here, there's only two questions left that remain. Why did they abandon the car? But I think I just confirmed that, right? I've done it twice. I'm not going to triple down on it. The only question left remaining here to me is what happened to Gary Mathias? Because he was the only one whose body wasn't found. Now, I have a couple theories. One, maybe he survived. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Maybe he didn't survive because I was going to say maybe he found his friends, but then again, he probably would have told the story. Like, we would have that information, and there would also be confirmation, like, hey, his friend said that, hey, he survived and he came here. Maybe he died of hypothermia, but maybe he traveled further. Maybe. I mean, the fact that his body wasn't found anywhere near the vicinity kind of makes me feel like he might have gotten a little bit further. But then again, how could he possibly have gotten any further if it was still so cold out and his four buddies died of hypothermia? You know what I mean? Like, this one's kind of throwing me. Because a lot of their bodies were found, remember, and they were just bones. So it's like, okay, maybe, okay. They found the area, and they found the bones and the bodies of the four men because they were all within the vicinity of where they were expected to be. But maybe Gary Mathias somehow traveled a little bit further, and there's still snow on the ground. So they probably thought, who knows what happened to the other guy, not thinking to like look a certain direction, and maybe he died of hypothermia, and his body was in the snow, but maybe he was in like the deep regions of the forest, and between the snow, deterioration, animals, nature,